Well, hello and welcome, folks. Welcome to Just Folks Conversations with Emma. I'm Emma, and I'm just so excited today. I've had the very, very, very good fortune of meeting a young man who I have an indirect history with. His mom and I used to be teachers, educators in the same high school. And I used to hear about these little boys, this little young man named Bryan, but I actually didn't get to put eyes on him. And now he's not such a little boy anymore. But I must say he is extremely talented and gifted, and I'm really out of words when it comes to describing the kind of talent that Bryan brings to the table, and he's so generous with it. With no further interruptions from me, I just like to present Bryan Alston. How are you, Bryan?
I'm very good, Emma. Nice for you to have me on here. I really appreciate this. And nice to meet you.
Very nice meeting you as well. Um, Tell the audience a bit about you. How did you get started in music?
Well, I my first start in music was generously given to me by my parents. I was about 5 years old, and one summer of 1996, they decided to put me and my brother in
Mhm.
music lessons. I played piano, he played the trumpet, and
Mm.
we started at the Nathan Carter School of Music. Back then, it was called the New Shiloh School of Music, because at the time, Nathan Carter, which a lot of folks in Baltimore know that name and know it well, uh,
Mhm.
he started this. He helped to start him and his brother, the late Dr. Harold A. Carter Sr. started this music school at the church.
Mhm.
So I think it was barely a year old when we started. And so, they put us in lessons, and that's where my start on the piano started. It was a rather simple, nothing, terribly extraordinary. But they just started me on the lessons, and it kind of went from there.
Well, clearly the seed was planted, and just to clarify, um, Mr. Carter, your teacher, Dr. Carter, was the choir director at the world renowned Morgan State Choir, and I think it branched out into a community choir as well because previous members of the choirs they graduated, moved on, and out into the world, still came back to support the organization. So they toured worldwide, and he was really a maestro, as you say, as you are. So having that exposure early in your life um, really set you on a path. What was it like for you?
Well,
Um, Go ahead.
I myself did not work with have him as a choir director. My brother did, because
Mm,
you had because the older because he's about 5 years older than I am. So at the times we
mhm,
would go like in the ensemble, when they would
mm,
have the choir ensemble as part of the music school, and he worked under him. And so I have more like anecdotal accounts, like obviously
mm,
from my mom,
mhm,
who was on that choir, and how
mm,
he truly was, a maestro, very, just a masterful choral conductor, choral arranger.
mm,
There's one of his proteges, Marco Merrick. He still performs like his arrangements and stuff. So he was just very talented in both things, very meticulous, uh,
mhm,
very
mhm,
very particular in how he wanted things, and he wanted, and so. Uh,
mm,
but yeah, he just had all kinds of connections, and so
mm. Well, let me ask you, do you have any of those qualities? How meticulous are you? And the reason I bring that up is because of the quality of your work. So you're smiling.
yeah. Well, yes, I've been told that I can be a bit of a perfectionist.
Okay.
So now I like to, my church choir, they often call me a taskmaster, but I told them, I
Mm,
said, look, now I often use Carter as a reference. I said, look, I am a teddy bear compared to him and some of the others out there. But But yeah, I definitely kind of, got some of that, so you have a lot of that, meticulous, kind of, particularly in my own practice. I mean, I'm not as, and sometimes I'm not even as meticulous as I need to be, but the
Mm,
desire is there to, kind of be that way, because you just it all comes from a place of wanting to express things as accurately and and as much as you can. And it's like, the more detailed, the more you can hone in on the details,
mhm.
that helps like the greater picture. So we're kind of, I think we're just always driven to get something higher. And sometimes we'll play something and people will love it and say, oh, that was so great, but when our mind's thinking, oh, but I didn't get that right though, that wasn't quite there.
Mm. But that brings up another question for me. With what's your intention? Is your intention as you're presenting these pieces, not necessarily with the choirs, although we can talk about that, but with you personally, when you're playing something and you have practiced it and you know every single note and you have just really mastered this piece, what's your intention? Are you expressing what you think the composer intended, or are you coming to it from a place of your own interpretation?
It's both. It's both.
Okay. Okay.
Because the composer, they kind of set the stage, because there is it's kind of like the composer, kind of makes the bigger picture, right?
Hmm.
And they kind of set the stage.
Hmm.
Now, how exactly you want to go about making the picture, that's where the interpretation comes in, you see. And
Hmm.
that interpretation, it can be objective and subjective at the same time.
What do
Uh,
you mean by that?
in that, in other words, you could say that, okay, if the composer wrote forte here, and if he wrote forzandos here, then yes, you don't that's like the most important thing. It's
All right,
like,
now explain those terms.
I'm sorry, yeah. So I was just throwing those in there. A forzando is basically, it's a type of dynamic, like you
Okay.
say forte meaning loud, piano meaning soft. But so
Okay.
and so forzando is that when you want something to be loud, just very subtle. It's like the da dum da dum da dum da. Right. So if
Mhm.
you see that, for example, you say, okay, you have to hit that, because because that's what the composer wanted. Okay. Now,
Mhm.
but even within that, there's a certain parameter, right? Because within that, you say, okay, well, how much do you want to accent? You want to go the da da or the ba da? You see, that
Right.
where interpretation comes in. So it's a very it's not a really set line about between which, because it's because there is a almost like an honoring of the composer that's required
Mhm.
to maintain the core, the spirit of the past of any given passage of their music. But
Mhm.
then there is also room for you to kind of express. So if because it's not like you could if you ever look at a piece of music, you don't see, say, you may see one dynamic marking, so they may say loud forte, right? But
Mhm.
you won't see a whole lot. You may not see another dynamic marking for, I don't know, 8 bars, 10 bars, 12 bars, right? So
Mhm.
that is where the more subjective, like, interpretation, like how you want to divide a certain uh phrase. So in other words, so a phrase can be, that's kind of like a division of a musical line. And so
Okay.
how you want to approach that, you see, because that's the reason why you can hear one piece played by 5 different pianists, and you're likely going to get something different. Now,
Mhm.
does that mean that all 5 pianists just completely deviated from the composer's score? No, but some of the execution of the
Mhm.
of the composer's instructions
Mhm.
That will differ, and that's why sometimes you'll have like when you have like those those critics shows,
Mhm.
they'll like listen to something, say, oh, I like this interpretation, oh, I don't really like this interpretation, or oh, I
Mhm.
like this piece a little bit, I like that passage a little bit faster, or I'll like or if you break it down even further into like orchestral things, it's like, oh, well, I like more flutes there, or I like more trumpet there. See, that's the subjectivity.
Mhm.
So
I see. Well, do you ever find yourself in total opposition to what the composer has written, including their instructions, and you say, you know what, they really missed the mark on that one. It ought to be another kind of way. Do you ever do that?
no, I don't think I've ever been in like total opposition.
Hmm.
Yeah, particularly not with the great composers, where this stuff has
Hmm.
been, I'm more likely to be in opposition if I hear how somebody interprets it and say, yeah, I wouldn't have done that there. But
Hmm.
most of the time, because again, you it kind of there's a certain core that you have to hold the integrity of, because
Hmm.
that was coming from the inside of the composer, and
Hmm.
you go it out. Now, that's not now. There are some composers I say I just don't like what they write.
Hmm.
He just might
Hmm.
not be for me. Yeah,
Right.
just it's just as a lot of us listen to songs, and some of us like a certain kind of music, some of us
Hmm.
like a different one.
Right.
But most of the time, if I ain't fit, if I'm not really particularly feeling, unless I have to, I don't really play it.
Okay. Well, that
So
makes a lot of
it's
sense.
just but again, it's a preference thing. It's a
Yeah.
preference thing. Yeah.
So, what are your preferences? Who do you like? What kind of music really appeals to you?
Well, I have been broadening my horizons over the past recent years. Where it all started was the classical.
Okay.
Classical music was like that was pretty much that's always going to be my home base.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, with the greats of Beethoven, which is, if anybody that knows me for 5 minutes knows that is my absolute favorite composer, because I
Mm.
think that he's one of our greatest geniuses, around. You get to the Beethovens, and then the Mozarts, the Bachs, the Chopins, all of that has always been that's always going to be closest to my heart. But then I started to kind of branch out, and it started with the Beatles, and that's
Oh,
when I started getting.
at what point did you discover the Beatles? Because you're much too young for the Beatles to be part of your, you know, current,
Ah,
part of your childhood. So,
yes, well, it was thanks to CBS. I think it was CBS. They did a 50th anniversary special
mhm.
back in February of 2014. And
Okay.
it was the 50th anniversary of when the Beatles first made their appearance on the Ed Sullivan Show.
Yes.
And so I happened to be watching it that night. And so
Hmm.
I heard, some of their things, and a couple of things caught my ear. It's like, I was like,
Hmm.
I said, because I knew about the Beatles, but I didn't, because it's like we all hear like music in passing that we may not like, pay like full attention to. So
Yes.
then I heard them singing. I saw her standing there and Hey Jude, and then it's like I started listening to that. I said, huh, I said, yeah, I kind of like that. So then I started listening to that, and that was it. I was hooked.
Oh, okay. And so, did you start just listening to the music first, and or did you go out and buy sheet music, or
Yeah. Well,
what
I didn't go
happened?
out and buy any sheet music. I just started to listen to it. I just
Okay.
started to listen to it more and more. And when the Beatles became the music of my 20s, and it's really funny because my dad,
Mhm.
see, they were the music of his actual 20s.
Yes.
That
Yes.
back then. So like he and I, it's really funny. We ended up, what we share our love of the Beatles because they kind of came into our lives at the same time. So that
That's
was my
interesting.
first real branching out, because I
Yeah.
think the Beatles were like just one of the greatest, rock bands of all time. And so,
Mm.
but from there, I started to, kind of listen to, different genres, to, pay, and just, I think my musical awareness kind of opened up. And,
Mm.
now I'm able to, at least appreciate, the different genres. Cause it's like, even if it's not like my personal flavor, I can appreciate, especially the music of the older decades, just how great it was. I mean, the
Eh,
music of the 60s and 70s, the 60s were probably, they like the golden decade of
Why do
music.
you say that? What's so appealing?
Because the music, it was across different genres. It was so many hits that
Was it was it the messaging through the music, or is it the sound of the music, the styles? I mean, what?
I would say it was a little bit of all of those things,
Mm,
but the songs were of such quality that they today you don't even have to have been born then, but you've heard things, you've
mm.
heard these things from that era. You know, it's just really amazing just how many, because I kind of judge a song by, okay, how long is it going to last.
Mhm.
And so there are still things, from the 60s and mid 70s, like, all, not just the Beatles, but I mean, just think about the 60s, the Beatles, Rolling Stones, Beach Boys, you know, you could just go on. Then in the 70s, you had
Mm,
all the Motown,
mm.
you had all of that. And again, these things, that, yeah, we weren't born back then, but it's like everybody who hasn't heard, the Temptations,
Right.
something about the
Yeah.
Temptations, who hasn't heard, something by the Beach Boys, or the
Mm.
Beatles, or I could just kind of go down. It's just a whole list of hits that came that you still hear on commercials, you still hear
That's
used.
that's true. It's like the background of our lives now. You hear a lot of those Earth, Wind, and Fire.
Yeah.
You hear those kinds of songs. Now, compare today's popular music, because what you're identifying is popular music from those eras. Compare today's, and how would you classify or define today's popular music? What is that like?
Well, I have become a little bit of the grumpy old man of the day, talking about today's pop music.
And you're so young, bless you.
But the way I talk about it, I sound like I'm much I'm 7 8 years old. But
Mm,
e- the quality, I often find myself disappointed because the quality, that it just in terms of melody and chord has, it has diminished so since, in comparison to, to the previous decades, and that just the overall creativity, being imaginative, making things that aren't so repetitive and such, there was something that was lost, that, today, you're kind of hard pressed to find a song that has more than three unique chords in there.
mm. So
And
you're actually talking about the structure of the music, and you're saying because the structure is so simplistic that it doesn't measure up to past eras.
yeah, yes, and folks, folks will, I've been in spirited debates with folks,
Mm,
over this issue, because it's not so much a thing of where you say, oh well, in order for a pop song to be good, it has to have four chords or five chords. It's not so much
mhm.
that as, what you're doing with,
Okay.
and that if it has four chords, okay, what are you doing with the melody? Because yes, they're great pop songs. It's just like the Beatles' "Let It Be." That
Hmm.
whole song was built on four chords. But
Okay.
because you had ding dum bum bum dum dum bum bum, which is what you hear, so ad nauseum today. But
Hmm.
what was it that made it stick? But they had the melody. Na, na, na,
Hmm.
da, 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 da. And see, that's what made it memorable. Whereas today, you may hear those same do dee da dee da dee, and you'll hear on top na na da 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 na na da 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 da.
So it sounds formulaic.
Say that again.
I'm sorry. Recording this at home, the phone rang. It cut across our line. Are you saying then that the music is so formulaic? I mean, that it doesn't leave room for creative element to Well, just structurally, I know a little teeny bit about music, and I know that there are major and minor chords. That much I can identify. It sounds to me like everything's in a flat out major, and that there are no subtleties behind, the music.
You're absolutely right. Your heart, you know, if I hear a minor chord in a pop song today, I'm like, yay! Oh,
Mm,
yeah. I said, you don't hear that chord anymore, because
mm-hmm,
you're right. It's like because even within the major mode, the interspersion of those minor keys to make something a little bit more nuanced, a little, add a little bit more color to it.
mm,
You can't even find that anymore half of the time. Because then again, because like when folks hear me talk about this, they think that I want all pop music to sound like classical music. No, not it's not that. But all music uses different elements. Okay, you put a major chord here and then you put a minor chord there to make it say, it just makes it sound to make it sound sweeter. Or you may go to a chord, a different chord that may not be part of a key. I won't get bogged down the technical details of that, but there's something that can kind of help to the color it. See, all of those things, it's just you don't hear
mm-hmm.
much anymore. And
Well, let me ask you this. Now, in past times, music, we say, reflects the period of time where people live. Our music now is not that emotional in a sense. I mean, it can be intense. I say our, I'm not contributing to that, but the popular music is, it can be intense. I'm looking at, rap, which has very, very little melody that I'm able to discern. Um, but the nuances, the moods that would lead you from one emotion to another, I think that's kind of the function of music. So when you look at our popular culture overall, what's your observation about the culture, and do you see a connection between the culture and the way music is being expressed now?
you know I really, and again, I'm not, I don't count myself as any kind of a sociologist or anything like that.
Mhm,
um but I I have really kind of been scratching my head at about, like, the reflection of the culture, and then whether there is a connection to why the music, why the music sounds what the way it does. And I am not entirely sure, because it's
mm,
not like we just stopped having emotional times and emotional
mm,
moments and
mhm,
things. But I do not know whether our culture, see, because I don't like to really like put our culture like in the box, saying, oh, well, we can't, my generation can't appreciate, or
mhm,
can't do it, because I believe that we can. But it could just be a function of whatever is going on in the recording
mm,
industry, and
mm,
perhaps the culture, musically, because again, we're still emotionally, we're going through stuff just like ever before. 'Cause
mhm,
every generation has their trials and their struggles,
mhm.
but we just seem to kind of like, settle for the mediocre when it comes to music. And
Okay.
again, this isn't, I really can't really speak for, for a whole culture.
Mm,
That's a big thing. But
big question.
it's like it's a big thing. So I could not really tell you, really,
Mhm,
why. I can only observe from the, at the standpoint of, what's going on musically, and what seems to be lacking in the what recording industry is putting out. And
mhm,
I feel like people are just, whatever, because it's popular, you listen to it. But
mhm.
at the same time, somebody could very well be introduced to music of another decade and say, wow, this, we don't, people aren't writing stuff like this.
Oh, well, maybe. maybe things will shift a little bit. And perhaps maybe someone's already doing that with independent music. Because, if you've got a phone and access to the internet, you can download some sort of app to make music. So let's see
Yeah,
what happens.
and I have no doubt that there is good music out there, and there's plenty
Hmm.
of it. It
Hmm.
just has a lot of trouble bubbling to the surface because
Mm,
one of the things people, oh well, Brian, you talk about pop music, but yeah, but there's music out there. But I was like, yes, I'm sure that there is. The problem is it's not
mm,
it's not getting it's not getting into the top 20, top 10, 20, 30,
mm.
40. It's
Okay.
not getting out into the air because before it's like I say, well, should you really have to dig that deep to find
Mm,
music? Whereas in previous decades, it was just there. A number one hit
mm,
meant okay, it was a great song, it was quality.
mhm, mhm,
Today, a number one hit, well, it can just be from a popular artist. It doesn't have to be particularly, lasting. It doesn't have
mhm,
to be, of particular quality. It's like if the artist is popular, people hear it, and it's like, okay, that, that's it. And
mhm,
I've like I said, these I've had like these discussions with folks, some that are very uh uh passionate in their defense of pop
uh-huh,
music because some people will talk to me and they think that I'm just attacking, I'm just trying to bring down pop music. It's like, well, no, it's like
mm,
it's just a recognition of of things that are just lacking.
mm,
Because no matter what era you're in, there are just certain things about music that will just make things last. And it can be various things. It can be a bass line.
mm,
It's just like it's like you get MC Hammer. It's like boom, doo, doo, boom, 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 boom. So what's going on musically there? What's your
mm,
ear drawn to? That bass line, right?
mhm,
And that
mhm,
that was
mhm.
and that's why
Yeah.
that song lasted. You think about Bill Withers and The Lovely Day. It's like,
Mm,
having that lovely day, that
mhm,
long drum. That's why that lasted. So
mhm,
if the song doesn't have something that sets it apart,
mm,
what I think is missing. You see that may be that could be the reason. And you mentioned rap a few minutes ago that even with
mhm,
that it was never really the melody with rap, but it's the beat. But melodically, I think the thing with rap is like it's what's going on in the background. You see.
mm.
And see, so when you hear there are certain rap songs that I'm almost sure they lasted because of what was going on in the background, that it was repetitive but distinctive at the same time, you know?
Mm. Well, which may account for some of the sampling that went on. I don't know if I don't listen to it, but I'm pretty aware that sampling was one of the things that propelled uh, rap or kind of supported it because those very elements that you're talking about that came from a previous era were those little foundational pieces that they built into the newer music. So it's all connected, and we'll just see what happens next. Which is my question for you. What are your next plans? What's happening next?
Yes, that's been the $1 million question for me the past couple of years. 'Cause I think I'm still at a point where I'm still trying to kind of search to see exactly musically where I'm going to end up. But
Mm,
I do know that I intend to jump fully into composition and arranging, which is
mm,
the arranging being something that I'm already kind of that I've already kind of been doing, but
mhm,
now I am looking to just kind of start to educate myself, read more about form and different aspects of composition, and being able to employ those things and start creating music. That's like
mm,
the overall thing. And I certainly once the pandemic passes, I seem to have a certain desire to teach older adults, well, and adults period, music, uh,
mhm,
teaching piano. And so
Now that's a challenge though, isn't it? What's your feeling about, older people, stiff fingers and, slower response time?
well, we'll see. Well, the way I look at that is that no matter how slow it may be, it's still working the brain, and it's still
Mm,
making new connections. And I think
hmm.
that is very therapeutic, especially for the aging brain, to kind of keep it active.
Right.
And also too, it's just that I I don't think I have run into a person yet that used to play piano as a child, but
Hmm.
didn't regret not going back to it.
Mm.
Because folks will say, "Yeah, I played piano when I was." I can't get
You got a
point.
student. Sign me up. Sign me
And
up.
so it was because there's always a desire, if
Mm.
they ever touched an instrument, they ever picked up an instrument, that, oh my gosh, I wish I had not put it down.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
And so and also, um I find it to be much more of a joy, because see, with working with children, particularly the littlest ones, I tried that for a couple of years. Uh,
Hmm.
that was had its own challenge, and probably the most
Hmm.
challenging thing I found was that, having to break down the language.
Mm.
And
Okay.
I teach better by illustration than I do, trying to, but I have to break it down into their language, and then you have to, you have to kind of do it like that. Now, my teacher who taught me, Dr. O'Hare, he's a professor, and I think he may be the current. I think he runs the music department at Howard University now. And
Hmm.
so yeah, he had a real gift for working. He has a real gift for working with kids and teaching children music. So I think that part of it, and some of the people that I went to school with also have that gift. But
Hmm.
I found that mine, it kind of functions a little bit differently. And
Okay.
so I find that, the less I have to break down language to, like, to element, to really, like, to kid level, the more
Hmm.
easier I can teach. And so,
Hmm.
I started thinking about teaching older adults when a choir member of mine, who, she's very good sing, very, very good ear. Um,
Hmm.
I started to teach her piano.
Okay.
And so, and my gosh, I mean, and I enjoyed it, and she was one of the best students I ever had, because, like,
Mm.
she actually made progress. See, and that's the other thing. See, if you already have the talent there, you can come back to an instrument when you're 60, 70 years old, or older. But the
Wow.
talent is there,
Mm.
still develop it, because there is a person that I know that he took up the trombone just a couple of years ago at age 64, well, 63 now. I guess it was about 3 years ago. He
Hmm.
took up the trombone, and he has been developing. He's been getting
Mm.
better. He has started to play in church. So
Wow. Okay.
if the talent, especially if the talent is already there, then
Mm.
it just takes nurturing, and it gives you something, to kind of work on, and to kind of, get, to kind of get your brain to keep working. Because, when you start talking about, finger independence and all of that, it's,
Hmm.
it works wonders for the brain. And again, I'm not, I'm not a medical, the justice, just from, you observe. Because it's like, even when folks are older, even if, they get to the unfortunate stages of, dementia or Alzheimer's,
Hmm.
that music still stays. I will never forget when I was just watching, what I love about technology today is we have access to all these videos and all of these, every day.
Hmm. Right.
uh, and there was this lady. She was a prima ballerina back in her youth. And
Hmm.
this video was taken a time, not it wasn't too long before she unfortunately passed away. She was old. She was like a 80s or 90. I don't know. I'm not quite sure how old she was, but anyway, and she had, Alzheimer's. It was either Alzheimer's or dementia, but they showed her sitting in this chair. But when they started to play Tchaikovsky's Swan Lake, and that goes like da 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 da. She started to, you know, do those motions.
It animated her.
Yeah, and she was doing the motions that, it all came coming back to her that,
Oh my goodness.
that she, and so she still remembered that. So see, not only does it keep the brain going, even when the brain's not going so well, guess what? The music doesn't go away.
Mm,
It's the
that's the ultimate gift.
yeah.
Yeah, that's why it's so important that we keep it in our society and pay attention to it.
Yes. And that is the other thing too, that is I believe is part of my next, is trying to restore um our society's awareness, especially the younger generation, of the great music of the past
Mm,
eras, past centuries,
mhm,
particularly in church,
mm,
talking about church music. And this is a desire that's shared by many of us. Like I said, I mentioned Marco Merrick, and I've also had talks with another great organist of the area, Patrick Alston, about, as a matter of fact, Marco Merrick, he has the community concert choir of Baltimore.
okay.
That's, and trying to keep the great music of the church alive
Mhm,
has
mhm,
been one of what it has been of a very, of importance to them. And it's, and the more, as the longer I that I, look at things, it's like it's become important to me as well, because I see this music trying to fade out, of people trying to fade the music out of this, of the church, all the great hymns, all the great anthems, all even the spirituals, which, are kind of like a heart to, yeah, particularly to us
mhm.
as African Americans.
Yes.
And people are, you're starting to see those less and less, and you're
Mhm,
starting to see people, become less and less, particularly in my generation, to not know those things, and then not to, know what those things are.
mhm,
And so, somehow or another, we have got to turn the tide of this, and bring this thing, and bring these things, because these things, there, it's like, and it's not to say that contemporary gospel can't still be worshipful, that it can't still be
mhm,
soulful, but the thing is, there's a reason why these anthems and the spirituals have lasted for as long as they have.
mhm,
Because
mhm,
see, I do not believe that these things last for hundreds of years just to get to our little piece of the timeline in the
mhm,
2010s and 2020s, that all of a sudden, oh yeah, no, it's just not there. Mm-mm. Because I don't buy that, because we are still spiritual human beings, and we still, and we still need, um the certain, all kinds of music. And then
yes.
when you're talking about God's word, and the expression of the theology in music, then
Mhm,
yes, you need it. And there was one pastor, I was gosh, I am blanking on the name of the church where I was now. But this was a couple years ago. There were these two brothers. They did a series called Bring Back the Hymns. And
mm,
it was these two young dudes. They were like my age, maybe a little bit, maybe just a little bit older. And the whole service was hymns. They did them in like
mhm,
like kind of like a, energetic way, but they were the
okay.
hymns. And the pastor stood up, and again, I will let you know when I I think about what the name of the church, because it was a church in Baltimore. But I just can't remember now what the name was. But anyway, so this guy, he got up and he said, you know what? Uh, contemporary, like modern gospel is the fire, but the hymns are the wood.
Mm,
You see,
mm. That's
hymns
very
are,
insightful.
because he said you can't have fire if you don't
Right.
have the wood.
There you go.
Hymns, because of the way that the way that the spiritual truths were expressed, the way that
Mhm,
God's word was expressed in the hymns. What in hymns, it's very, it's a different kind of power, and it's a different kind of
Consciousnness. It's a
Yeah,
different kind of consciousness.
yes, and it's a different kind of foundation because seems to be so. In other words, all of the the contemporary all of that has its place. It does have its place.
Mm-hmm.
However, there are times where you need to dig deeper.
Mm-hmm.
And you know and so that's why you have to have that thing. And unfortunately churches have made the mistake of saying, oh well, if we want to bring young people in, we got to just do away with, we can't do all these anthems, or we can't do all these spiritual stuff to bring the young people in.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, I am not convinced that age has anything to do with whether somebody appreciates or whether somebody can be blessed by the anthems. And I just certainly don't think it has anything to do with, like, okay, well, if you're a certain age, today's culture, you just don't need
Mm-hmm.
the hymns anymore. Because you see, the word of God is timeless, for one thing. And so it stands to reason that um any hymns that kind of delve into and express those truths in a more detailed, in a deeper way, that
Mm-hmm.
would never go out of style either. Because see, I've always been a big proponent of, you have everything. If a church, you can do this to come out of stuff, that's fine, but then you get those spirituals in there, get
Mm.
those anthems in there.
So you want to keep the awareness and plant those seeds and give folks a variety of experiences, and they'll come back to it as they get older, but they'll have an awareness of it, kind of like playing the piano when you're 7 and then coming back to it when you're 70. The seed was in there.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Well, you are a classically trained musician, and just tell us briefly where you received your training.
Okay, uh, so going back to the beginning, so like I said, so I took piano lessons at the Nathan Carter School of Music all the way up through high school, first semester
Hmm.
of college. That was basically, yeah, so that was basically like kind of like the bottom, that's where my training. My dear teacher, Dr. O'Hare, that I just mentioned,
Hmm.
of Howard University, he pretty much raised me on the piano. And
Hmm.
so, yeah, and so after that, I spent some time at Essex Community College, well, about Community College, Baltimore County, Essex branch. I studied under Joe Teeter there for about 3 years, and learned a lot there. And then
Hmm.
I went to Towson, and that
Hmm.
was where I studied with the late, great Reynaldo Reyes. And anybody, his name is another name that's very well known. Both here and abroad, actually, because
Hmm.
he was a concert pianist, and even
Hmm.
up to his last day. And studying under him was probably the most impactful on me.
Hmm.
I thank God every day. Yeah, I thank God for that. Every time I think about it, because it's like he really changed the way that I went about practice. He kind of really planted some stuff in me about
Hmm.
how to approach practice, how to actually think about
Hmm.
what you're doing. You see, and that was the piece right there. Like, how you're viewing this. And he was a master sight reader. I mean, the dude could pick it didn't matter how difficult the thing was, he could just pick it up and just go, you know
Hmm.
and just like nothing. And so he was one of the best, ranked one of the best pianists in the world. And he had just performed all over. He had performed, all 32 Beethoven sonatas and such, but it was just, he just was just a fantastic, brilliant pianist. But yeah, but studying under him, I probably grew more in those 3.5 years than I had previously.
Hmm.
Because again, he was all about, okay, how are you thinking about this? And then he would say, okay, well, now when you're practicing, okay, you know, in order to get it into your brain, you have to do this, you have to do that. All right, think of this way. You know, with sight reading, it's like he broke it down, and yeah, and again, sight reading has always been was always my weakness, and it's still
Hmm.
and it still is a weakness. So when that and when I you know, for anybody that doesn't know what sight reading it is, it's basically it's literally you sit down and you get out a piece of music and then you read directly from it
And
without.
you play without practicing, you play directly with the notes are on the page.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. And
So
that's quite a skill.
yes, and it is probably something that I have had to continue to work on because
Hmm.
it has kind of it has been a, you know, a challenge. I mean, even to this day, it's like I'm much more comfortable without music in front of me than I am
Okay.
with it in front of me. And
Hmm.
so, you know,
Well,
so
I have observed as from your tapes, which we want to talk about, that you will have music in front of you, and you seem to refer to it. Um, you know, just kind of as a little bit of a GPS to kind of give you a sense of where you are in the song, because your playing of it, which is what captured my attention, is it's it has integrity. It's emotionally, I'd say, pure. What you're feeling, at least I think that's what I'm seeing, is what's being expressed. Um, and and I really want to encourage everyone to go to YouTube to see your to listen, because we can't see you, but to listen to your playing of the toccata. Did I say that right?
yes.
Okay, what is the full appropriate name of that piece?
Actually, yes, it is the toccata from Charles Marie Vidor, organ symphony number 5. And this was part of a large the toccatos are part of a larger work. Like
Hmm.
it was a whole organ symphony. I don't know. I would have to check to see how exactly how many movements. I think it was like maybe a 4 or 5 movement piece. And the toccata was the finale. And that is what became so beloved from that.
And I've actually seen other organists present it as well, but no one does it. And you're right about the various interpretations. Your interpretation, almost I have to sit down because it leaves. I'm ready to stretch out on the floor after it's over. It is it cleanses the soul. It is just so amazing to listen to your to the notes and to the sound and the energy that comes from this instrument, which seems to be the size of the actual cathedral itself. I don't know. uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
such power behind that.
Yes, and you know, and that, and it's you know, and again, we are talking about why things last, right?
Hmm.
That
Hmm.
toccata was written back in the 19th century, and yet here we are.
Hmm.
It's still beloved, but yes, yeah, that is actually one of just, you know, two or like actual organ repertoire pieces that I learned, because I only took organ lessons at, you know, again, this was at at Nathan Carter School of Music for under Dr. Samuel Springer. That was also part of my training. And folks from Morgan will know who he is, because he is the organist that you often see playing with
Hmm.
the choir and such over there. Again, and
Hmm.
Dr. Springer again, just another brilliant organist. I mean, the dude can play. They can play almost anything. And but anyway, so that was one of two pieces that I learned in my short study. Because after that, it was kind of like my focus kind of went more towards piano, because that was what I was actually getting the degree in. And
Mm.
organ kind of it, you know, I don't want to say it took a complete backseat, because I was still playing in church.
Hmm.
I was, you know, the rest of it, I just kind of started to, you know, maybe self-teach a little bit. So it was like never something that I put like my complete energy in it. And going forward, it's certainly something that I need to that I need to invest more time in. And I am blessed enough to have full access to one of the greatest organs in the city and in the area.
Mm.
The Aeolian Skinner organ, at St. Michael, at the Church of St. Michael and All Angels. That's my church where I have been playing for the last 8 years,
Hmm.
and that is a very storied and a very that's another beloved organ. Like all the organists will in the area will tell you exactly what it is.
Hmm.
It's got a long history, as the church, because it was installed like back in the early '60s. And I believe there have been a lot of greats that have played on it, including Virgil Fox. Uh,
Mm.
and he was another prominent organist
Hmm.
of the 20th century. And I
Yes,
think he helped to dedicate. He was at its original dedication. But that organ, and I'll just kind of put this out there, is that we've been trying. We were actually, before everything shut down with the pandemic, we were in the process of um, trying to raise money for the
mm-hmm.
work to be done on the organ that needs to be done, and
Hmm.
it's rather extensive, and you can see how brilliant of an instrument it is, because even despite all the work that needs to be done on it, even in its diminished state, you know,
That was the diminished state. And
yeah.
then, and okay, that's number one. And number two, that wasn't your main focus. That's kind of like your backseat talent. Oh my goodness. We want to make sure that everyone can find your YouTube channel. So would you share, please? Because folks need to hear this.
Well, my YouTube page it's Maestro BJWA, and hang on, I'm gonna pull it up now to make sure I get this right. Hang on. Ew, ew, that's not it. Okay. Yeah, no, thank you.
Well, while
Yes.
you're checking, I just want to let the viewers and listeners know that you have several um, offerings, and they're all wonderful. Uh, and it appears that you were taking live requests at the time that you were doing the piano selections from your church. So, do you plan on doing that again in the future?
Yes. 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 I definitely do, because I can tell you that was actually pandemic induced, because particularly the first couple of times, because I was not we weren't even having services at all. We weren't doing anything virtual yet,
Hmm.
because that was at the time where we, along, as everyone else was, were just trying to figure out exactly how we were going to move.
Function.
And so
Yes.
in the meantime, it was just such a strange thing for me not to be playing on
Hmm.
Sunday. And when you are a minister of music, when you are a church musician, and you're unable to, play, to play for folks, and put play for services, I don't know, it didn't feel right. And so
Mm.
I just said, you know what? I said, and again, I've never really liked recording myself, because again, that perfectionism kind of leaks in there.
Mm.
It's like when I hear myself again, it's like, ah, what was that? You know, but it was just something that, I just said, I'm just gonna to kind of go, and it could have been the spirits leading, because
Mm.
again, trust me, it's not something I ordinarily did back then. Uh,
Well,
and so
then you were listening to Spirit. Spirit told you what to do, and I'm really glad to hear you say you're going to do it again, because the your feedback to the requests coming in, it was like a delayed conversation, but it was definitely a conversation. And then the pleasure that you took in playing, and then the skill that you bring, and the enjoyment that you're having is just so enjoyable. So I want to encourage everyone to go to. Did
it's
you find it?
you type in Maestro BJWA, but really, all you just type in my name, Bryan Alston, BryanAlston,
Okay.
and it'll come up. You will see, because on my page I have both current and old recordings. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
I had my first recordings. Hang on. Yeah, my first recordings were actually of my senior recital back in 2014.
Okay.
And actually, you will see the great Ronaldo Reyes playing alongside me in one of those videos.
I hadn't seen that one. I'm going to look for that one.
Yes, if you look on that, you look on the rest of the page. I have my whole recital there where I played like a variety of various composers. There's Chopin, there is Liszt. I had a couple of made sure I put a couple of African American composers in there. Scott Joplin
Okay.
that did his Maple Leaf Rag, and
Mm.
also Nathaniel Dett, who was another African American choral composer, as well as pianist. And so I had to make sure I put those in there. And there's also some another video of me playing the harpsichord, which was
Mm.
that was a fun adventure because I
Harpsichord.
yes
Wow, you step back into the past for that. What was that like?
Ha! It was very so because the harpsichord, that was the, for anybody that doesn't know, that was basically the predecessor to the piano.
Hmm.
And with
Hmm.
the harpsichord, it was something where the strings were plucked by a
Hmm.
mechanism, so that when you hit a key, it would pluck like ping ping, just
It
like how
plucks.
when you're playing a actual
Harp.
harp, and you see
Yes.
you see them plucking the strings, what I mean, and gliding
Yes.
across the string. Well, that concept was turned into the harpsichord that had the keyboard there,
Hmm.
and all of the plucking motion and all that. So the main difference was that no dynamic. You don't have a whole lot of dynamic range. So when you hit that note, it just goes like ping, and
Right.
that's it. You see, and so your dynamic range came from playing. If some harpsichords look like little organs and they had like multiple rows of keys, or
Okay.
what we call manuals. And
Okay.
so,
Hmm.
that would be like how if you want to go, another row might be a little bit softer than the other one. That was your dynamics. So,
Okay.
but so it's a different approach that you have to take, because again, there's no like,
There's no modulation.
now modulation refers more to key, to like actually changing the key, as
Wrong
opposed
word. Okay.
as opposed to dynamic range, because yeah, you could still, once harpsichords were perfected, you were able to play in all of the different keys. It took a little while to get there though, and
Mm.
that's a whole other discussion that I am not fully equipped to expound on right now. But um anyway, so that was interesting because I took lessons that semester, and just trying to learn how to feeling the pluck underneath your fingers. It was very strange for
Mm.
me, because it really does literally feel like bling ding bling bling bling,
And
but
you actually feel it on your fingertips as you
yeah,
play the keys?
yes, as you depress the key. So you
Mm.
about playing it when like if you hit a piano key, you just feel like the bottom of the keyboard, right? And it's very
Right.
smooth.
Right.
So it's like
You don't get that. You don't get that feedback.
you don't have that also, it's a little bit more resistance. And
Okay.
also too, you don't have what you would call the damper pedal, that when you hit a note
Mm.
on the piano, and it just stays as you press down the pedal. Well,
Okay.
you don't have that on the harpsichord. See, so you have to do other
Mm.
things to try and create some more body, some more cut from some more uh resonance and things. And so that was probably one of the more interesting semesters, having
Mm.
yeah. So you'll see that on there as well. And so I really thank God for that recital, because that was because I was able to just to do that, play up Beethoven piano concerto, which was,
Mhm.
again, you'll see my teacher there, because he was playing
Mm.
what was the orchestra. What they would do is that, if you don't have an orchestra there for the piano concerto, and for anybody that doesn't know, that's a piano concerto, is when you have the piano and then you
Mhm.
have the orchestra behind you,
Okay.
and that you have the interaction between the orchestra and the piano. Yeah, I mean, probably what
Okay.
I'm just trying to think of like Tchaikovsky, da 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 ba dee da 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 boom bling
Mhm.
bling boom bling. That's a
Mhm. Mhm.
okay. And so
Okay.
what they would do is that they would just reduce the orchestral parts to a piano part. And so that's so that's all that's on there. Like I said, I'm only just getting into growing into the uploading. The most recent thing that I did was I paid tribute to Beethoven because it was Beethoven's 200th birthday year.
Mhm.
Yeah, and so he turned 200 back in December. And so the whole year, well, eh, before the pandemic, there were going to be a whole lot of various celebrations. Uh,
Mm.
and I was actually planning on going over to Europe to go to
Mm.
because I was going to go with my uncle who sadly he passed away
Mm.
earlier last year at Myers. He was another great musician that I looked up to, and we have family, we have some cousins over there, and so
Okay.
we were going to go to Frankfurt, and I was going to take the train up to Bonn and visit the museum, Beethoven Museum, and all of
Mm.
that. But anyway,
Mhm.
so I recorded the sonata.
Mhm.
The Moonlight Sonata, this,
Yes.
and so and that was that, and so that was the most recent thing I did. So like I said, so it's not like a
Mm.
whole ton of stuff on there yet, but there will be more to come.
Well, what's there is beautiful in quality and in spirit. And Bryan, we could talk forever. Um, you're just fascinating, and your work um, as a pianist and really as an ambassador of music is really going to have great impact as it has already on the community. So I'm just wishing you the very best. I would like for you to say hi to your mom for me.
Oh,
I
I
know
most,
she's
I most certainly
I
will.
know she is ecstatic because her soror is now the vice president of the United States.
Oh my gosh, she's been ski
Yes.
weaving all day.
Yes, still sporting my pearls here.
Are
Um,
you AKA too?
oh yeah, no, but in honor,
Of it. Yeah,
yes,
that's awesome. Well, yeah, well, thank you.
yes.
I yeah, am just set to go about this the work that God gives me,
Hmm.
the gift that He gives me, and really all glory goes to Him because I have to look to Him every day, and he just graciously just blesses me, and I just go with it, and I intend to to fully embrace all that he's given me, and I know that whatever change that he wants that he wants to make through me, that I'm just gonna follow it and go, and I'm just so thankful to be able to do what I've been able to do.
Well, you're going to do even greater things because you are listening, you're following spirit, and you're clearly appreciative of your gifts. So, that just keeps the door open, and you're so generous with sharing your gifts, which means, the more you give, the more you receive. So I thank you again, Bryan.
Yeah,
I can't believe we're just meeting for the first time. I feel like we've known each other for a while, but this is the first time.
well, me and
And
my
I,
mother are a lot alike, so
yeah,
that
very true.
um,
Very true. Very true. Give her a hug for me. Say
I
hi to your
most
dad
certainly
and
will.
your brother.
Yes,
And I invite you to come back again.
anytime, anytime. I could talk about music all day. You know.
Okay, that's wonderful. So thank you so much.
All
Have
right, thank
a
you.
great evening and hugs to you.
All
Blessings.
right, God bless you.
God bless you. Bye bye.